So, I wanted to come on today and talk about creating a safe place for someone else. And what I mean by a safe place is being someone that they can come to and be completely relaxed, guards down, no defenses, and just be themselves, pretty much. The question that comes up with this a lot is, how do I create a safe place for someone else? And I'd start off by actively listening. A lot of times people don't feel heard. They have demanding jobs, they have, questionable home dynamics, whatever their case may be. People just don't feel heard. And to be that somebody that someone can come to and just get everything off your chest and just unload, not necessarily like they're unloading on you, because they're not, they're just saying things that they've been wanting to say for maybe a day or two and just get off of their chest. There's a great release in that. And being able to release that takes a lot of pressure off of you. That is something that I find a lot of my friends complimenting me on. Being able to just talk to me and I just listen. Because a lot of things don't need to be responded to. Just to listen to someone talk about their issues, it's if you have the time, it doesn't hurt. Just being that someone can bounce something off of, or just let something go. Another is respecting someone's boundaries. I don't feel like I need to go deep into that. Respect people's boundaries. That's just it. Another is paying attention to nonverbal communication. And I'm sure we've all experienced someone saying one thing, but their body is telling you something completely different. Like, say we're going out somewhere and there's something that you really wanted to do. And I'm telling you, yeah, sure, let's go. But I'm arms crossed, sitting back, it's clear that I'm not comfortable. My excitement has lowered. It's obvious that I don't want to do that. So, paying attention to body language. Yes, that's something that can definitely make someone feel safe with you. And also being accountable. Accountability. We all know what accountability is. Just be accountable. I can say, especially in my case, as a child, I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of conflict. And that conflict was due to unhealed trauma. Unhealed trauma. With that being said, where everyone was aggressive and going at it and clashing, I was one of the ones that I shied away from conflict. I didn't want to be involved. It made me upset. I just didn't want to be around it. So I would escape. I would escape into writing. I wrote a lot. I wrote poetry a lot. Just anything to stay out of the conflict. But I found as I got a little older and I stepped into dating and, meeting guys, the guys that I went for, or the guys that, I pursued, all were the same. They all had very toxic traits. Conflict, arguments, fights, in two cases, physically fighting. And it was just traumatic experiences for me. And I recall having a conversation in which I was asked, especially after the first time I was with someone who was physically violent, why would someone go back to something like that? And it wasn't until recently that I figured that out. That type of environment is familiar. And unfortunately, that was where I felt safe. I felt safe in what I knew. I knew conflict. I knew arguing. I knew fighting. I knew people exchanging nasty words and comments and, you know, just nastiness. That's what I knew. So that's what I was comfortable with. As to say, that was my safe place. That's what I considered safe. The thought of being in a healthy relationship didn't feel safe to me. It made me question. It made me terrified because first of all, how do I be in this situation and maintain the happiness, So it's weird, but yeah. So if there's anyone that you know and you find yourself asking like, why does this person stay in a situation, especially like domestic violence situations? Why does that person stay in that situation? Why don't they just leave? Why don't they just leave? Why don't they just leave? They're not just leaving because that is a safe place for them. There is something familiar in that to them that makes them feel safe. So before you ask them about this situation, maybe consider their background and what they were brought up in or what they've experienced for that to be safe for them, even though it's not safe. That is something that a lot needs to ask because these things are important. It's easy for us to judge a situation and call someone stupid or whatever the case may be for staying in the situation. But without knowing someone's background, it's sort of not fair to judge them in a situation. You might anyway. That's on you. That might just be what you do. You're going to do what you want. But try to consider their background if you care about them. Learning to create a safe place for yourself. After you've been in a situation such as a domestic situation, many like to stick with it. Like they become it. Just like they try to tell you to, just because you've been through something, that doesn't mean that's who you are. You don't have to let that follow you. So with that being said, after being in a situation like that, you need to take the proper steps. If that's therapy or whatever it is that you need to do, you need to take the proper steps to address it, sit in it, and let it go and move on. Otherwise, you find yourself being that and carrying that with you. And situations such as that, some people may enjoy the empathy that comes with that. So they're not letting it go to continuously keep bringing it back up just to receive the empathy for it. And that's not healthy. You can't keep hanging on to the same thing and pointing your finger and being angry and being mad and not letting go of someone because of something that they did to you that you are no longer in. You've moved on. You've made your way out of it. So since you've made your way out of it, it's best to let it go and go about your life. But you have those that want to hang on to it for the sympathy. Like, oh, well, this happened to me, so I can't do this, this, and that. Or this dude, he put his hands on me. He verbally abused me. He mentally abused me. So all men ain't shit. Well, that's not true. That one man ain't shit, but they use that, they use that to possibly ain't shit themselves. They use it to manipulate, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy. You got to move on. You have to let it go, because that can't continuously be the excuse for your poor decisions. Sorry to tell you, but it can't. There's this book that I've read when I first started my shift, and I began to realize that I was beginning a spiritual journey. I didn't quite know what was going on, and so I was looking for things and researching things and just trying to get a little answers on, okay, I feel this thing, what is it? And what do I do with it? And what direction do I go? How do I know more about it? And I went to Barnes and Nobles, and I went to, the self-help area, something like that, self-awareness, self-help. And I kept getting pulled back to this book. And this book is Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender. And it's by David R. Hawkins. And I read this book 2 times without completing the last chapter because I knew it was going to be over, and it was just so good to me, and I didn't want it to be over. I do the same thing with the Golden Girls. I will watch every single episode except that last one when Dorothy gets married and leaves, because then it's over, and the reality of it being over is it's not over. We're going to keep watching the Golden Girls except that last episode. Okay. Anyways, in this, it says, there are a lot of payoffs to blame. We get to be innocent. We get to enjoy self-pity. We get to be the martyr and the victim, and we get to be the recipients of sympathy. So I feel like a lot of people that have been through traumatic situations, they, in a way, choose not to move on for that sympathy, to be that victim over and over and over again. And they make those bad decisions and use that as an excuse. So yeah, we go through things and we don't let them go. Some of us let them go, some of us don't. It depends, what the outcome, your desired outcome is to be. You can feel like, I'm not going to let this be me. I'm going to keep moving. Or you can let it consume you and not move on. In any event, people make choices to stay in certain situations because it feels safe to them. That is what their reality has been, and that is what is considered their safe place. And that's just the honest truth. But back to you creating a safe place for someone else. I find in my experience that with most people that I deal with on a daily basis, just listening to them, honestly, just listening alone makes the world of a difference to someone else. Hearing them, not necessarily responding, but letting them know that you are listening makes a difference. Being there for them to talk to, not being biased, being honest, and just respecting them and their boundaries. That's it. That is creating a safe place for someone else. So yes, thank you guys for listening. I am Nayuri. This is the D&D Nayuri podcast. And until next week, Wednesday, I will see you all later. And you make sure to have a better day.